array as I stand here and talk to you today, to the point where the Facebook / Instagram, the meta universe, the meta crowd created their own version of it called Threads. Okay, so now there's an alternative, but now for us as consumers and users, there's another social platform for us to try to figure out and try to get our content onto and to try to make strides in building our brands. Where do you draw the line? Good day to you, my friend. Welcome to episode 10 of Solo Podcasting Simplified. I'm Jason Sircone, and before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to invite you to follow and subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or you're streaming on your favorite podcast app, please take a second to follow and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, click the little bell so you know when new content is set to come your way. This is the only podcast dedicated to all of your solo podcasting initiatives, and I don't want you to miss a single second of what I have in store for you. Today, I want to share some thoughts and some commentary about why I've decided, at least for now, to break up with social media. Now, I've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people, and everybody's got a different opinion on this. Why do you need to be on social media? Why you absolutely have to be on social media? Why you can't get away with building anything without being on social media? You know, I don't necessarily buy into that thought process because for me, social media it's not what it used to be. It's not where I'm happy. And it's amazing to hear these words spill out of my mouth because at one point in time, I was the biggest social media advocate in the world, to the point where on a past podcast, me and my co-host had a point counterpoint episode where I talked about not needing a website if you built a social media presence. Now, this was many years ago, and even on that podcast itself, I was proven wrong and given some new perspectives to think about. But fast forward to where I am today, and wow, was I way off base with that mindset. Social media has its positives, it has its negatives. It's all about how you filter out the nonsense and take in what you want to see. But the biggest reason that I wanted to take a step back and really remove these platforms from my life was because I want to follow my own advice. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But there are other factors in play. First of all, let me bring this up. And listen, I'm willing to take in anybody's feedback on this thought because I've heard it from different people that I follow on different platforms. As I stand here and record this episode, it's July of 2023. It's summertime. And supposedly, people aren't on social media right now. Reach is down because people are on vacation. People are doing other things outside. They're just not paying as much attention to social media. To which it just makes me say bullshit. Because when I see people that I follow, it doesn't look like their engagement's down. It doesn't look like they have less likes or follows or people commenting or conversations happening within their threads. All of the metrics, whether you follow them religiously or not, are still there. So I don't buy into that philosophy that just because it's summertime, people aren't paying as much attention to social media. As I said, I'm more than happy to hear your thoughts on this philosophy if you believe this or if you've experienced this with your own social networks. But for me, I just feel as if my time is better spent on platforms that are going to do good for my brand and then in turn do good for the people that find me in my brand. And it's hard to do that when everything is spread out on multiple platforms. So as I said at the top of the show here, I want to start following my own advice. And that advice can be heard on episode 7 of Solo Podcasting Simplified, where I talk about niching down and getting laser focused with your content. We know there is a ton of nonsense going on with social media right now. So Twitter is in complete disarray as I stand here and talk to you today, to the point where the Facebook slash Instagram, the meta universe, the meta crowd created their own version of it called Threads. Okay, so now there's an alternative, but now for us as consumers and users, there's another social platform for us to try to figure out and try to get our content onto and to try to make strides in building our brands. Where do you draw the line? Where does it stop? When you get to a point to where you're spreading your bandwidth so thin and then another platform enters the fray, you have to start making conscious decisions about what makes sense for you and your brand. And that's why I've decided to go this way. I'm looking at this from the grand scale, and I literally ask myself the question, how is my life going to improve if I get off these networks for a month? And I'm not setting that time frame as like, okay, 1 month and I'm done. And maybe it'll be less, maybe it'll be more. But I don't want to contribute content to something that is not going to serve me and my brand. And believe me, I'm not that guy's like, oh, I'm blaming the algorithm and it sucks and blah blah blah. Like I know they're constantly making updates and changes, and maybe I could do more with my content to give the algorithm more of what it needs to understand what I'm doing and who I'm trying to serve and the message that I'm trying to bring to the world. But at the same time, I'm looking at this from a different perspective. I was in an event back in 2021 and I heard two presenters talk about being everywhere and why your presence needs to be on every platform because that's where everyone's playing and you don't want to miss out. I immediately was like, I think I'm in the wrong room because I don't subscribe to that model. My thought process has been the reverse of that, that if everybody is everywhere and users, consumers, listeners, viewers, readers, whatever you want to be labeled as or whatever you want to attract to you and your brand, if they're everywhere, they're going to find you where you are making the biggest impact, where you are providing the best content and the best information for them to make that transformation. That information does not need to exist on 20 different platforms, in essence, creating this echo chamber where everywhere somebody lands, they're hearing the same thing from you. That's oftentimes what ends up happening with social media content because we only have so much bandwidth for creation. We don't have time to be creating different pieces for different platforms. If you have a team at your disposal and they can do this for you, that's another story. But I'm talking more to the coach, the consultant, the solopreneur that's doing a lot of this themselves. You may have some help, but for the most part, this is you trying to find the best way to take your brand to undeniable levels. And if you're pushing content onto all these different platforms, is it really making a difference? These were some of the things I was asking myself. And I've had conversations and I've threatened it in the past. I'm done. I don't want to be on these platforms. They don't make me happy. They're not serving me. But for whatever reason, I don't go away. I do it's the Godfather mentality. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. If you're a results-driven coach or consultant that really wants to sink your teeth into solo podcasting and produce multifaceted content that elevates your brand in undeniable ways, the Solo Podcasters Mastermind is calling your name. This fully interactive 60-day mastermind was built to help you develop the right mindset for podcasting, hone your solo podcasting skills, build a well-oiled podcast infrastructure to grow your show, and give you access to support from other solo podcasters. You'll even get assistance with post-production and have your show launched in less than 60 days. Get all the details and register to be part of the next Solo Podcasters Mastermind session at jasonsircone.com/mastermind. I don't want to be on a platform in an environment that's A, making me miserable because I'm not seeing anything that's adding real value to my life, or B, not allowing me to make the powerful connections that I want to make and ultimately transform my brand into a machine that helps others get that transformation. If you're watching me on YouTube or you're listening via your favorite podcast app, My goal is to bring you content that showcases the power and value of solo podcast content and helps you leverage this type of content to make undeniable connections with your listeners and to establish trust, authority, and thought leadership within your niche. If I'm bringing this content to a platform that isn't allowing me to make those types of connections, the first thing I ask is, why am I there? I want to be where I can make those dynamic connections and I can bring you the most value possible. That's why I decided to follow my own advice, niche down, and get laser focused on where I want to be so I can bring you the most value. So if you're watching or listening to this episode right now, that means that you have already accessed this content on one of the pillars that I'm looking to emphasize. So going forward, for the time being, as I said, who knows when or if I will get pulled back into the social media vortex. But for now, I'm looking to emphasize 4 key pillars to bring you the most valuable podcast content possible, and this content in video format as well. The first, obviously, is the podcast, which you can find on your favorite podcast streaming app across the World Wide Web. Second is YouTube. And if you're watching me on YouTube, how's it going? Third is my website, because my website is going to serve as the hub that is going to be jam-packed with information that you can get from the podcast, from the videos, from the blogs that I write. And ultimately, I want my website to serve as a resource that anybody looking for solo podcasting content and for more information about how to be a better podcaster and better communicator as a whole, they can turn to my website and they can get what they need. And fourth is my email list. Now, you can jump over to jasonsircone.com right now and you can join my email list, but I'm going to be putting together some free resources that I'll be sharing with you and giving to you, as I said, for free in exchange for your email address in the very near future. So stay tuned to the podcast, stay tuned to YouTube, stay tuned to my website, and you'll be able to get access to all that information in the near future. If you want to join now, you're more than welcome to, because people that are already on my list will be getting the same access to that information as I build it and as I begin to share it. So, website, podcast, YouTube, email list. Those are the 4 areas that I've chosen to emphasize. For now, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Threads, and I gave up on TikTok a while ago because I just was not enjoying my time there, but that will also remain on the shelf as well. I'm going to take some time away from these networks. So if you want to find me, if you want to connect with me, subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, jump on my email list, or visit me at jasonsircone.com. And because that information can be found there, I'm going to give it to you right here as well. Shoot me an email at jason@jasonsircone.com. You can jump on my calendar to set up a call, or just call me directly, 412-965-8428. Shoot me a text, give me a call. I'd be happy to connect with you and have a conversation. We don't need social media for everything. This isn't going to be something that everyone agrees with. Perhaps you're watching me right now and you disagree with my reasoning to put these platforms aside for now and focus in on where I want to be and where I want to bring the most value. This is my decision to make. Some may call this a mistake. I call it an opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to put more emphasis on the platforms that I know are going to serve as valuable resources for you. If I spread my bandwidth too thin, by definition, the attention I'm giving to the platforms where I want to grow the most are going to suffer. That's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. So looking ahead, look for more great videos, look for more live streams on YouTube, and look for more impactful podcast content. Still sticking to 3 episodes a week through Solo Podcasting Simplified, but I'll be adding more videos. I'll be doing more storytelling through my email, and I'll be putting more resources on jasonsircone.com. And in the future, if social media gives me a good reason to come back, I'll come back. But for now, it's all about building value on these platforms: website, YouTube, podcast, email list. Glad you're here for it. I'm looking forward to continuing to build our relationship as we connect through this podcast, through these videos on YouTube. And going forward, we'll see how things unfold as me and social media go on a break. That's going to do it for this episode of Solo Podcasting Simplified. I hope you had a great time. I know I did. Until we connect again, this is Jason Sircone on Solo Podcasting Simplified. Good talk. I'll see you out there.